Put up or shut up. The special master in the Mar-a-Lago search case is ordering former President Trump's legal team to prove claims that he and they have made out of court that the FBI planted evidence during the search. Judge Raymond Dearie, who Trump's team recommended for the special master role, says the lawyers must submit a sworn declaration, which of course means under oath. Outside of court, Trump and his legal team have not faced any consequences for making these baseless and false claims. They've said, with no proof, that the FBI could have planted evidence.
And quite honestly, I'm concerned that they may have planted something. You know, at this point, who knows? I don't trust the government, and that's a very frightening thing as an American.
I don't think that there was actually anything there that's worthwhile. We'll see what they come up with. You know, if they did, it'll be interesting, especially since they precluded me from actually watching what they did. But at this point, I don't necessarily think that they would even go to the extent of trying to plant information. I think they just make stuff up and, you know, come up with whatever they want.
The problem that you have is they go into rooms, they won't let anybody near them. They wouldn't even let them in the same building. Did they drop anything into those piles? Or did they do it later? There's no chain of custody here with them.
Wouldn't that be on videotape potentially?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they're in a room.
So that's what they have said publicly. Will they say it under oath? Let's bring in CNN political analyst and senior political correspondent for the New York Times, Maggie Haberman. Her new book, Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America, comes out on October 4th. You know, Maggie, it's not the first time that something that Trump or even his lawyers have said publicly is being tested in court, but I wonder what you think the stakes are in this case.
So in this case, Brianna, I think the stakes are pretty clear, which is that this is the hand-picked special master. This is who Donald Trump's team wanted, and he has sounded very skeptical of things that they have been saying all week, not just in this decision that came down yesterday, but in a conference earlier this week. He sounded very, eyebrow-raising about their claims. Now, the special master was, they have privately described this as the first step toward a possible eventual challenge of the FBI search on Trump's house. It's not going well so far. So when the judge and the special master is making clear to them, you can't say things outside court that you are not demonstrating here, I think that becomes a problem. And I do wonder, Brianna, this is what we saw before January 6th, 2021, after the November 2020 election, where Donald Trump's lawyers would make claims about widespread fraud that they wouldn't echo in court. And what we have seen is the impact of when Trump says something and it riles up his supporters. I have to wonder if that is in the special master's mind as well.
In this case, the difference is that the special master and judges are also saying, if you're going to say something, prove it. You've got to prove it now. Yet, the former president keeps on saying something and saying stuff. And this got a lot of attention, Maggie. I want to play this now, but you have a different take on it. So let's play it first. This was Donald Trump with Sean Hannity.
Is there a process? What was your process to declassify?
There doesn't have to be a process, as I understand it. There's different people say different things, but as I understand, there doesn't have to be. If you're the president of the United States, you can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it, because you're sending it to Mar-a-Lago or to wherever you're sending it. And there doesn't have to be a process. There can be a process, but there doesn't have to be. You're the president. You make that decision. So when you send it, it's declassified. I declassified everything.
Maggie, what most people picked up on was the whole idea of declassified in his mind as being something that doesn't exist on planet Earth. But you picked up on something else that might be legally problematic for him there.
Well, I picked up on both, John. I thought saying that he declassified something with his mind, I just want to be clear.
Also, you picked on something also, I should say, yeah.
Right. I just don't want this to sound as if it's in opposition, because that was certainly unusual to hear. But he did say, because you're sending it to Mar-a-Lago, that, John, seemed to indicate that he had intended to send the boxes of material to his private club and home, whereas there has been this line from people around him that this was all, an accident, things were just shipped out. He even said himself in the interview, which is not true, by the way, that the General Services Administration, which is basically government officials, had packed the boxes. They have denied that they did that. So they've tried leaning in on the idea that this was some kind of accident, and just now he seemed to suggest this was intentional.
It's not the only legal issue he's facing, of course. There's this civil fraud suit now that he's facing that Letitia James, the New York AG, has brought. And, you know, Maggie, whenever we see any legal action against Trump, he's able to say, look, they're after me. But I wonder in this case, does this hit on any vulnerability of his that is particularly sensitive as you see it?
There's no question that having a prosecutor stand up there and say he is not worth what he claims, he has made all kinds of statements about his finances that are not true, is something that he has tried to avoid for many, many decades. So just on a personal level for him, that cuts a little differently. Brianna, how this ends up playing out, I just don't think we know yet. Again, this is a civil suit. As best as I can tell, she's not making any moves in court to try to limit what the Trumps can do in business while this suit is playing out. That does say something, about how aggressively she's moving or not aggressively she's moving. But it is another thing, as you say, that he will point to say, I am a victim. They're after me. He has been, I think, the biggest demagogue we have seen in politics, in national politics in this country, in modern memory, possibly in the history of the country. And he is very good at using any time somebody is looking into possible misconduct or alleged misconduct and saying it's an example of just how unfair it all is.
Maggie, very quickly, I want to ask you about something you told Anderson the other night that jumped out at me. And it was about whether or not this makes it more or less likely he'll run for president again. And you said something sort of separate from this I hadn't really heard before, which is that you're hearing people around him questioning whether he really wants to put the effort in again. Explain that more.
Sure. So to be clear, John, that doesn't preclude whether he's going to run. There are plenty of candidates who have run, even if they don't particularly seem to have their heart in it. What a lot of people who have talked to him have said is that he doesn't seem to be enjoying politics, enjoying rallies, enjoying, the aspects of it that he liked before, not just when he was president, but when in the 2016 campaign, that it just seems sort of different for him, and he doesn't seem as either interested or engaged or what have you. Now, he may get there, it could change, and if it doesn't preclude him running, then it has limited utility as an observation, but it has raised questions for people about why his not his deadline, but his timing for when he would get in had kept moving back. Now, I expect it will remain beyond the midterms. This morning, there's a Politico report out about some moves that he is making, and I think that will lock him in further. But he has not seemed like the person who campaigned in 2016, and that could be for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because these are the things that have animated him, that have energized him, and now maybe not so much. What all is behind that? Maggie, thank you so much. Great to have you this morning. Joining me now to talk more about this is former federal prosecutor Joseph Marino. This really appears, Joe, to be the special master calling Trump's bluff. So what are the moves here that his lawyers can make?
Brianna, as I'm watching this, as having served on the defense side, my heart is palpitating because this is every defense lawyer's nightmare, that their client just goes out there and says things. And then you realize at some point, you've actually got to be called to the carpet, and a judge might say, all right, you've said all these things on social media, you've said them in maybe even public statements, even court filings. What do you actually got? And it sounds like, probably not much. So, this is reminiscent of all those times in the post-2020 election where the Trump team made these outlandish, arguments in public about all these, voting irregularities and things. But then every single time they were unable to bring any actual evidence in court. So yeah, they better really watch themselves now. This Judge Dearie is not having it, and they better really, kind of put up or shut up, as you said.
Do you think this whole process, the special master process, has actually maybe backfired for Trump?
If the goal of the Trump team was to buy itself some time, then yeah, I guess it's done that. Special master's in place and has till November 30th to do his job. If the goal was to get any kind of strategic advantage or to keep any of these documents seized from Mar-a-Lago out of evidence, then no, it's not going well at all. And if anything, it's kind of showing some of the hypocrisies of the team. So right now, per the 11th Circuit, all of the documents marked classified are now out of the special master's hands, back to the DOJ. Executive privilege will be a huge uphill climb, and Judge Dearie has already said, I'm pretty skeptical that you have an executive privilege claim here. So really all that's left is probably a small subset of documents. So at the end of the day, it's not going to change whether Donald Trump has any real culpability here. Maybe just bought himself a little extra time on the calendar.
But also a little humiliation, right?
That doesn't usually seem to stop him. I think he kind of sees that as a badge of honor, but frankly, it would horrify me if it was my client.
Yeah, maybe for the lawyers, it's not something they want to go through. Joe, really appreciate your analysis. Thank you.
Brianna.